Hello, and it's been 12 weeks since Deliberate Talks has been coming to you every Monday with some amazing people talking to you about digital marketing, entrepreneurship, evolved work goals, and career goals. And speaking about goals today, I, your host Dakshin Adyantaya, is hosting someone who strongly believes life is all about how you want it to be. But before we get into a conversation with her, here are some interesting facts to set the stage right. Did you know a study from Harvard Business School suggests that 83% of the United States population does not have goals? Wow. A study from Statista on life goals of millennials in the United Kingdom in the year 2019 highlighted that a top life goal of 51% of UK's millennials was to own a home, while a further 40% believed that achieving financial stability for their family was their top goal. Numbers highlighted from Goal Band suggest 92% of New Year goals failed by 15th of January. So do you make goals in your mind or write them down? Or what's the process like? Let's understand the answers to all these questions from our guest today right after this intro.
This is the Deliberate Talks Weekly Podcast, powered by the Pixelated Egg Digital Ventures. Tune in every week to learn something new about digital marketing and entrepreneurship. And now, over to the voice of your host, Dakshin Adyantaya. Enjoy the show.
So today, we have a Japanese author who recently launched her book, The Game of Self-Domination. She's also the host of Life Up Education TV, an entertainment and education show that features incredible stories of high achievers across a wide variety of industries, from entertainment to technology, to talk about art and science and the possibilities of humanity. Here's introducing Natsune Oki. Hello Natsune, welcome to the Deliberate Talks podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you very much for having me today.
Great. And since you launched your book earlier this month, The Game of Self-Domination, let's get straight into that and understand what really is the game of self-domination.
Yeah, so I named it as the game of self-domination because, it all comes down to your mindset game. It's never about managing your task. It's never about managing your time. It's always, always, always about managing your mind. Because if you can manage your mind, you can achieve anything. So this is why I named it as the game of self-domination.
And this is your first book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. And how long did it really take you to complete the book?
It took me about 5 months, maybe more. I started from like December. Before then, I sort of already had the idea and then I started some writing, but it was never that serious. I just thought like, someday I want to publish a book. But that was December, I fully like really started committing. So from that time on, I think it took me about 5 months to complete the entire book.
And where did the inspiration for the book come from? Is it the work that you have done before or the work that you're currently doing? What really drove you to write about the game of self-domination?
Yes, exactly. It was from my journey. Looking back, I've always been very courageous person. I've always taken purposely courageous paths where people didn't necessarily want to go into, including, starting my own company, moving to or, different country, moving abroad, starting life up from nothing, like from the ground, like everything, right? You know what I mean? During this journey, there have been multiple occasions, multiple times where I really, truly was put in a position where I really recognize the power of mind and how important it was to manage your mind. So that's why I wanted to put it out in a book.
There's also a part of the conversation in the book which says how everything is your fault when you are a true owner of your own life. Could you elaborate on this and tell how it actually creates peace in your mind looking at your failures?
Right. So, one of the things I talk about in my book is that you can never be a victim in your mind, right? Like if you want to cause some sort of action about your life, from a victim state, you can never achieve anything. And I mean, just look at, this pandemic and everything, like injustices happen every day in life in everybody, right? Like sadly, we want to make whatever happened to us, whatever that hurts us, accountable and responsible for the damage that's causing to us, right? But life really doesn't work that way. Even though something is happen out of your control, something that hurts you, something that damages you out of your control, you are the one who's responsible to keep striving even through that hardships, through that adversities. So when you start looking at these events that happen to you and then really raising your standard to say, look, whatever happened to me happened. And then I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm not going to be sad about it. I'm not going to point finger at people, but I'm going to own it. And I'm going to be fully control of the outcome that I'm going to create given my situation. So you first really needed to get to that place where you say, look, I'm going to own this and I'm going to have to be the one who's going to fix it. Because otherwise you can never produce any sort of results toward the outcome you want.
Right. So the first process is to actually talk to yourself about it, come to terms with the fact that acceptance is what we're talking about. But how do we go about practicing that? Once we have accepted that in the mind, how do we actually action it?
This is the emotion part that's doing the damage, actually exaggerating the damage. Like the thing is, this is why having a high sense of emotional intelligence is very important, especially if you're position of leader or entrepreneur, someone who's a creator in life. You cannot listen to your positive nor negative voice. You can only listen to a practical voice. Well, I wouldn't say you can't, but I'm going to say it's very effective if you are able to listen to your practical voice only and then completely shutting down to your positive or negative voice. And what I mean is that you first need to recognize nothing is ever about you. Nothing is about you. Everything is about outside. Like the world is one unit. We tend to take rejections or hardships or adversities so personally, right? Like we're only able to experience whatever we experience through the lens of our own perception. So it makes sense that it puts us in a position where we look at any event from our own perception. But in reality, we need to be really recognized. Whatever happened to us doesn't have any meaning to it. Like we need to recognize that it's us, our emotional thinkers, trying to assign or associate meaning to whatever the event. So when you start associating events, that's gonna exaggerate whatever the emotion you are attaching to the event or the perception you are attaching to the event. But in reality, things are just things and then they don't have meaning. So you need to really understand that portion and make sure to listen to your practical voice. So what is important? Like shutting down the voice of, positive voice or negative voice that's speaking to you emotionally. Like you need to shut them down and really focus on what is actually happening. What's important right now for me? What needs to happen right now to solve these problems? So that's the first step you need to do.
And this is a part of failure or recognizing in terms of not going right. But equal damage is also done when we kind of get overwhelmed with success. Like everyone wants success, everyone loves success, everyone wants to be successful. So how does one accept it and not get carried away from it? And also, how does one then exponentially grow in their journey, being very humble with success?
So the thing is, we're not living our life for anyone else but us, right? So we first really need to recognize the importance of self-awareness. The last thing you want to live for is the society's definition of success, right? And it's kind of silly if you first define what you want, and then if you start predicate your success fully on the feedback you're getting from the society to achieve whatever you define successful as, right? So you got to really always make sure that you are doing you and you're meeting your true virtue. And you're not predicating your matrix of success based on the feedback you're getting from around people.
Right. When we talk about the society, there's a lot of queries in terms of also understanding how do you actually deny the fact that the society is talking about it, right? There's also a part of a conversation where you talk about finding your own truth when people are against you, or, very few people actually celebrate your success as well. And like you rightly mentioned, you don't owe anyone anything beyond yourself because that success is what you have worked hard for. But how do you really not get affected by the fact that people talk about it positively or negatively?
I mean, just not giving a fuck. Once again, our definition of success should not predicate on the feedback or, basically the self-worth, the sense of self-worth acquiring the sense of self-worth should not come from the approval from others.
Right. There's also a part of a conversation where you talk about how to create a mental transformation in 3 phases. Can you elaborate these 3 phases and help us understand this better?
Yeah, of course. So this is what I talk about in my book. My book talks about how to create mental transformation, aka changes in life, in 3 different phases. The first phase, I talk about how to create decisiveness, commitment, and momentum in life. So how can we create this moment where you're finally committed and then say, enough is enough. I need to make a change or I have no other option, right? So I'm going to talk about how you can do that. And a lot of books would either talk about it from the perspective of inspiration or the desperation, but I talk about it from the both perspective because personally, I think you need both calling. So the calling that tells you whatever you're dreaming of is possible. So that is a part of inspiration. And then you also need to be disgusted about your life. Like you have no other option, but you need to change about the situation you're facing right now. Is the kind of a state that really, with no bullshit, will really put you in a place where you really needed to start acting on your life, right? Now that you have this momentum, then now you really need to understand what is it that your true intention is that's going to sustain your motivation and be in the game for a longer term. And then where I talk about the definition of happiness, and then I'm taking a quote from an ancient Greek philosopher, Aristotle, where he says, happiness is virtue activities of the soul. So basically what he's saying is, we are driven by 2 different motivations in life. First one is a reward. The second one is a threat. So that's the motivation that we live by. And then we tend to look at these 2 terms, positioning at the very opposite side of the spectrum, right? But in reality, reward should exist in the extension of a threat. So only by overcoming our adversities and failures and hardships, we're truly able to meet our full potential and then true identity. By collectively acquiring all these failures, all these hardships that you can overcome, now you can really build your character of who you are and truly meet who you are. And that's ultimate happiness. So that's what I talk about. And then during the second phase is all about how to create resilience. So I would show you also how you can change your definition around either failure and success. So actually both. A lot of time, I think people talk a lot about like how you can reshape the definition of failure, but there's not enough talk about how to reshape the definition of success. But in this book, I do both. And then the third phase, really transitioning to the third phase, I now start talking about the definition of happiness and success.
Interesting. So, while we talk about all these aspects of it, the starting point of anything is to actually action things like I mentioned previously. But how do you go about being more productive in actioning things? Is there a way that you can force a habit to actually get there to start creating before anything else?
Like, honestly, for a long time, I thought, there was this like an algorithm, all the successful people figure out or something like that, right? But I think at the very core, I think it all comes down to your managing your mind. Like if you are able to want something bad enough, you can be always resourceful and you can always figure out the way to get whatever you want. But that being said, I do have one thing that I recommend. Actually, I mentioned in my book, which is this matrix that I built based on the 5 different concepts. So basically what I did was I wanted to show people how people can use business thinking and economic thinking, where they have these strategies to create effectiveness and efficiency in their business execution. I wanted to show people how we can apply this thinking into life application, like life strategy. So I came up with this scoring system you can use to organize your, communication method, both internally and externally, by explaining 5 different concepts. The first one comes from Italian engineer. The second one comes from a British economist. The third one comes from McKinsey, the business consulting firm. And then the fourth one comes from Toyota, the Japanese automotive manufacturing company. And then the fifth one comes from 34th US president, the matrix he was using to organize his daily tasks. And so basically I came up with this scoring system to help you organize your thoughts around what's very important right now, and then what kind of results you can get from what tasks, and stuff like that. So that's something that I talked about in my book.
Mm. Right. And, there's also a conversation about the side hustles and, finding a direction to your own life and your goals. Is it possible for someone to not recognize their ikigai and, live without one? Or does it actually come over the years after trying everything? What's the real process of exploring an ikigai?
Yeah. So ikigai is something I talked about too. But what I talked about with ikigai is that actually, if you look at how the businesses or investment operate, you see diversification, right? And diversification protects you from taking risks. And I use the same principle here. When we look at, pursuing dreams, like maybe dreams wouldn't have to pay for your expenses. But instead, a dream can be just, something that makes you happy too, right? So for me, I think the better approach is to take something that is from your specialty that can create your money as a sustainable, like a stream of income. And then you can also pick from another area where you're just like happy or you love to do something that makes you happy by doing it. Without having an intention to make money from it. But in the end, it will be amazing if you can make money from it, right. But you don't have to have the same kind of intention from it. But if you look at it, I guess if you look at your job in this way, you can kind of create the diversification in the way you make money from what kind of income stream.
Mm-hmm. Strangely, I do have a conversation with a lot of people who are very fascinated by the concept of ikigai. But the whole process is, again, this question derives from the fact they've not recognized their ikigai and they've been struggling to really live without one. Does it happen over the years, or there is an intention where they have to drive themselves finding one? What happens when you don't find one?
My approach is like, you don't have to find ikigai, because ikigai is like this center point where it meets everything, right? It meets all the criteria. But for me, I think the better approach is to have a diversification. So you can be extreme at one thing, and then you can also have more like a practical thing that's backing you up, like in terms of income stream. My answer to your question is, not everybody has to find ikigai. I think you can have like a job that makes you extremely passionate, but that doesn't have a earning potential. You can also have a job that you can provide with your job skill, and that doesn't fulfill you. But just do both. And that's diversification.
And I think this actually derives more from, and it goes back to your conversation previously about the mindset. You're surrounded with so many people who are doing so many fantastic stuff that you suddenly start feeling whether, you're capable of doing something or not, and will it happen to you, or should you chase behind it? How do you go about that process? I think this conversation derives from there. You think there's a lot of societal pressure also to be recognized apart from that? I know we touched upon it on success and failures mindset, but purely because you're surrounded by successful people, how do you not get complex from it?
I think that's because you're caring about other people too much. I mean, once again, like you need to, like, other people's life have nothing to do with yours, like there's no one else in this world who would believe in you as much as you do. Right. Like your mom, your wife, your, I don't know, girlfriend, boyfriend, friends, no one will care about your life as much as you do. And when you realize that, like you really need to stop caring about what other people think. Like they got their own life, and then you just got to do you. Like don't acquire their framework of what needs to happen by what age. Like it has nothing to do with your definition of happiness or your definition of what successful life should look like not at all. So I think the best thing I do is that I'm so aware of that other people's life have nothing to do with mine. Like the thought of it doesn't even bother me at all.
Mm-hmm. And talking about your own personal success, failures, and needs in life, there's a Maslow's pyramid which talks about our needs, right? The safety needs, the love, the esteem needs, and the self-actualization needs.
Yep.
How do you really go about, fulfilling all these needs from a more personal and attaining the self-actualization needs? do you think there's a process to go about it in the right way?
I think that there's no process, one size fit all solution for anything really. I think once again it all comes down to self-awareness. It's very important. I mean, each person requires different solutions. And I think for me, what works for me the most is that I'm willing to try different things. And I'm very easygoing. Like, I don't dwell on my losses or failure. I have like zero time spending about it. So I think that helps other people as well. Like, when you feel like you want to do something, just try it. And then when you try enough things, you kind of notice, like, you kind of get to another level mental state where you notice like what you like, what you don't like. And then also by like pursuing for long enough, like having a perseverance for long enough for things, doing things that you love, you can really truly meet your self-actualization.
Interesting. And there's a conversation also in terms of money that's very important. Just like success, a lot of people want to earn money, and that's what their life revolves around. What you are living for is not money. Then what is it? Is something that I want to understand from you. And this is something that you also refer to in your conversations. So very interested to know this part of the conversation.
I'm living for my life. Like, I'm not living for the end goal. I'm not living to die. I'm living to live. And I think a lot of people see success as one destination, like how much money you make, like, you know, whatever you achieved, right? But that's why people fail. You need to love the process. You need to love like the failure. You need to love the failure. You need to love the wins. You need to love the whole package. You can't just live the one side.
Right. You know, they have their own needs and goals, right? This is very interesting because people then make checklists, right? They say, I will save money and then travel the world. I will work harder for it. And I will save money and buy that expensive phone or the laptop or a vehicle. So all that becomes your primary goals, regardless of anything else in your life, which talks about working on yourself and improving yourself. So these are completely two different conversations, right? And people then tend to go more materialistic in terms of needs and happiness rather than improving on themselves. Do you think that's where the majority of the people go wrong or right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's also like the whole society, the message of capitalism and everything is fucking with their heads.
Right. Because one picture of an international trip on an Instagram, and the next thing you want to know is, I want to go there as well. Let me earn a lot of money. And then starts becoming life goals rather than improving on your own self and becoming the better version of you.
This is why self-awareness is very important. And then once again, like, I guess one of the things I heard from someone else before too is that, you know, if you're willing to do what's hard, which is, you know, really understanding who you really are, like having a very high sense of self-awareness is a hard thing to do. But if you're willing to do hard things, life will get easier. But if you're not willing to do the hard thing up front, the whole life will be miserable.
Right. So self-doubt is another thing, again, rises from the conversations that we are having. Most of them self-doubt themselves highly and don't try certain things because of that as well. Do you have any recommendations in how to, you know, really reveal yourself from self-doubts, and how does one person start actioning that?
Yeah, one of the things I've been using that's been working for me is that, actually this is something I mentioned also in my book, is that to be highly practical, not to be emotional. Like, having a very high sense of emotional intelligence is very important, because you cannot listen to your positive voice or negative voice, because these are the voice that's doing the talk out of your emotion. You're not being practical. So when you have the doubts, you really need to recognize whatever you're experiencing right now doesn't have any meaning. It's you, the emotional being, is trying to attach some sort of meaning to it. But you need to be like very emotionally very aware that whatever happened to, like, nothing is ever about you. But you tend to make things at a very personal level, because we're only experiencing whatever happened to our life from the angle, from the lens of our own perception. But we need to learn how to be interdependent instead of being independent. And especially if you're in a position of leader or position of, like, you know, business owner, entrepreneur, whoever, like, who's creator in life. I mean, shit happens like all the time. And you cannot let your emotion to drive your action. You need to be able to listen to your practical voice, who knows what is actually practical and what is actually happening.
Superb. So that's pretty much it in terms of the questions. I'm going to move into a rapid fire question round now and then followed by a user's question. So rapid fire, really quick in terms of answering this. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, sure.
3 books or 3 creators or 3 videos that you recommend people should consume to find inspiration.
Okay, the first one is Impact Theory. I really like that. It's hosted by Tom Bilyeu, by the co-founder of QuestBar, pre-co-founder of QuestBar. I also watch Gary Vee a lot, and I like Tony Robbins.
Your golden rule for people struggling to find their motivation.
Just try it. Just try whatever and celebrate, embrace your failure.
Okay. The fundamental mindset difference between people who are achieving long-term success versus people who gain tremendous motivation at the beginning but end up burning out in the end.
Patient.
As simple as that, right?
Yeah.
What's the ideal way of planning a long-term goal and short-term goal?
Well, ideal way of long-term goal would be to really find your self-awareness, very high, containing very high sense of self-awareness, and really, having the vision aligned with what you want, like emotionally at the macro. And then short-term will be, it's like a finance, it's the subject of finance. Money today, money tomorrow is more valuable than money long-term. So you kind of need to have the balance between like what you really want the business to go versus like how you can like budget around to get to your long-term goal. So you need to have like a multiple income stream to support your dream while you're striving for the dream.
Right. What's next in terms of Life Up education?
I wouldn't say next, but this is a show that I'm doing. And then now I'm publishing a book, but I'm planning to come out with a lot more interviews on the visual platform, which is like on YouTube and my website.
And your favorite life quotes would be?
I mean, I have many, but one thing I referred in my book, made the difference in my book, is Aristotle saying happiness is virtue activities of the soul, which I mentioned earlier too, but this is pretty powerful one for me.
Very interesting. And regarding your book, where can people find your book and how do they go about buying it?
Yeah, my book can be found on my website, lifeupeducationtv.com, and it's also available on Amazon. You can find me pretty much across all the social media. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all under Life Up Education TV.
Great stuff.
Friend us on your socials and let's connect.
I'm going to now move into a last question from our user. And this question comes from Neha Chawla, who is based out of Canada. And she asks, if meditation is a concern in terms of personally practicing it, what are the other ways to actually make yourself feel centered, or make yourself, think otherwise and feel more motivated?
So for me, I think it's a long game. Like, to me, I kind of see my motivation as my standard. I don't see it as nice to have anymore. So I never really have this problem. I mean, I do sometimes, right? But I think it all comes down to you raising your standard. Like, motivation is something that is not nice to have. If you want to succeed, if you want to step up, if you want to be a leader in life, it's your requirement. You need to look at it like that.
Right. But if not meditation, then what's the other ways to feel, a little more centered in terms of focusing on work better?
I genuinely, I'm not sure how to answer this, because to me, like, I never had that problem where I feel like I wasn't centered, because I think that is because I think I make it as my standard that, it's not nice to have that I'm, clear about my vision, or I'm clear about where I'm going, or I'm motivated about where I'm going. Like, I don't see them as nice to have, but I'm seeing them as my standard. So I start from having them in the right position, and then I go like above it, if that makes sense.
Fair. Amazing stuff. That's pretty much it, what I have for you. This has been very insightful and good way of understanding your perceptions of life and goals. Thank you so much for being a part of the Deliberate Talks podcast. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, I did. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show.
And I wish you all the best for your book and all the activities and ventures that's waiting forward to be executed by you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for today's episode. If you have any feedback, feel free to write to thedeliberate.talks@gmail.com or follow us on the social media platforms of The Deliberate Talks and the Pixelated Egg Digital Ventures. Join in next week for another episode with another expert. Till then, inspire and be inspired.